This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffman. Today is Tuesday, the 9th of December, 2025. We're so glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, we're going to talk with the folks at agmarket.net and see what happened in those markets on a WASDE day. But first, we're going to talk with Elanco's Dr. Wayne Ayers, and we're going to have the first of our two-part conversation with him about what we need to know about New World Screwworm, even though it's a problem that is south of the Mexican border right now. Talking with the folks at Elanco, and we have Dr. Wayne Ayers joining us right now. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us here today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're talking about something that's been making a lot of headlines here this year, especially obviously in the cattle industry, but it is something that does affect any mammal out there, and that is the New World Screwworm. And obviously, we've been hearing a lot of talk about that. Maybe give us an update from Elanco's perspective about what you're wanting to communicate with the customers about.
Yeah, so it is very much a hot topic, and it's a fearful topic because it's something we don't know about. For the only those of us that have a lot of gray hair like me that maybe were alive before we drove it out of the U.S. or our grandfathers, had to deal with it. So we have a little bit of a point of reference, and everybody else doesn't because it's been gone out of the U.S. since the late '60s. And so it is a little bit scary. So I think that the biggest thing is to get educated. So the USDA has an excellent site that's called the New World Screwworm Playbook, and they will update it as we get new information, maybe where the fly is, if there's new products available. I've been on the Screwworm Task Force at Elanco for a year now, and we've been having conversations with the different regulatory bodies, USDA, EPA, FDA, looking at, and other industry other industry pharmaceutical companies are in those conversations as well. We're all looking at, do we have some products that maybe we need to, or couldn't use for emergency authorization. So all of those things are happening in the background, and it's not information that's necessarily out in front of people, but I think all the producers need to understand there is a lot of these conversations. We are having conversations with state agencies as well. USDA is having conversations with Department of Livestock's, in the various states, also the state veterinarian's office. They're going to be the coordinator for should it get to the U.S. So there is a lot there. Some things that maybe we can talk about today that people need to be aware of is we probably need to think just a little bit differently as producers.
Okay.
One is so the New World Screwworm is a fly. The female lays her egg in a new wound, and her maggot actually eats living tissue, as opposed to what we're used to dealing with here is with the false screwworm, which actually lays eggs in carrion or a decaying wound, so an infected wound. House flies, other flies that we have, blowflies, they lay eggs in dead tissue. And the screwworm only attacks live tissue.
Okay.
So now we have to think about things like hornfly bites. So we deal with hornflies on a regular basis on cattle, but those bites can be a potential place for that screwworm to lay her egg in that little bite. Ticks create a wound when they bite and drop off. That's a potential spot. So we need to think about better, good fly control programs just in general, and good tick control programs. And if we do that, we'll reduce that chance by having less bites.
Right.
We reduce that chance that a female fly finds a wound.
Right.
Speaking of wounds, we need to be thinking about, if I put a tag in a calf's ear, that's a wound. That is a potential site. If I happen to be tagging a calf in the middle of the season and there are active screwworm, so I need to spray. There's really only one product right now that's labeled, EPA labeled as a treatment, and that's Catron 4, which happens to be an Elanco product.
Okay.
And it's been a long history of being used for screwworm control on wounds and treatments. So do we use something like that when we put a tag in and we spray that area with a product? Okay. We need to be thinking about open castration. Are we going to continue to open castrate at branding time or turnout time? Because now I've created a wound. And if I do so, I darn sure need to make sure I spray it to try and prevent an infection. Maybe we go to, a day of birth band castration rather than using open castrations. Therefore, I'm decreasing the chance of a wound. Umbilical cords. People don't think about umbilical cords. Those in South America that are dealing with this every day, they make sure they're spraying umbilicus. They're treating animals to make sure that that fly does not use that fresh navel as an entry point. And it's a high incident rate if you don't treat them, and a high death loss rate in calves or young stock, lambs, kids, whatever. If we don't treat those navels, because it's a very short distance for that maggot to eat its way into the abdomen of an animal, and then they perish. So those are kind of some mindset things that we may have to just think about a little bit.
And it's interesting because you brought those up, and as much as we've been talking about, when we thought about wounds, you think about, okay, if the animal cut itself or scraped or something, you don't think about everything that we do. Anything that can just be, like you said, a little puncture from a tick. It's microscopic. You can't even see with the naked eye usually, but that's something the fly can take advantage of, and that, you said right there, it changes the way of thinking. And it's kind of amazing that we haven't thought about that too far out. I mean, obviously we're doing a lot of work to keep it out and informing people, but there's a lot to think about when we do that, because of the fact it's just stuff we take for granted day to day, but that is leaving susceptible spots open.
Exactly. Even our routine things of treatment or vaccinating. We've all given an injection and had a little drop of blood at that entry spot. That is enough to set, potentially attract a female. So we just have to get into a different mindset.
Right.
We have to start thinking about prevention. That is going to be probably the biggest thing that we can do as producers, is look at, okay, overall, I need to look at cattle more often. If we get them, we need to be out there every day or every couple of days, because if I see a wound, I need to be able to catch that animal and treat it to prevent it from becoming infested. So it's more of a mindset thing than I think, then we shouldn't be fear it. We shouldn't necessarily fear it. We need to be educated and be mindful of, okay, how does this life cycle work and how can I prevent it from happening?
Absolutely. Again, was Dr. Wayne Ayers of Elanco. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the closing markets now, and being joined by Cory Bratland of agmarket.net. And Cory, it was WASD Day. Normally December is kind of a snooze fest. Did it hold up like normal, or did we see any fireworks today?
Dustin, for the most part, yeah, it was pretty quiet, at least on the soybeans and the wheat front. Corn, we did get a little bit of a surprise. We saw the USDA come in and increase our export number up 125 million bushels. So now we're projected up to exporting 3.2 billion bushels. So that's a record amount of export demand, in which, we can't deny that. I mean, it's our export pace has been really swift, and we're hearing that the U.S. corn is the cheapest corn in the world. So we continue to see very strong demand out of the U.S. for corn. So, with that being said, they in this report, they did not make any changes to the production side. They'll wait and save those changes here for the January 12th report. But so that takes our carryout from 2.154 billion down to 2.029 billion bushels. So we're still at a comfortable level of 2 billion bushels, but down substantially. And now the traders are kind of wondering is, if we do get a yield decrease and we don't see a demand decrease, this carryout could slip under, 2 billion bushels pretty easy come January.
Now, obviously, 2 billion bushels is a lot of bushels, but in the grand scheme of things, if we would slip below that 2 billion mark, I mean, what would that potentially do to markets?
That's just it. I mean, last year we were down to 1.3, 1.4. Actually, I think that number ended up being 1.5 billion bushels. But and when you look at the global side of things, the global numbers, I'm going to get the update here this afternoon, but we're down to probably the lowest levels on the global side of corn carryout since, I think it's been since 2013 or maybe even 2012 in here. So, when you put that thing into perspective, this is just tight. It's going to put a lot of emphasis that the U.S. is going to need to have to plant another probably 94, 95 or million more acres of corn, in which that case, it's to me that, hey, corn market's going to stay fairly supported in here, and we might even see that new crop December 26th going to have to maybe start to push up to 475, 480, or if not higher.
Now, we focused a lot on corn, but what did we see on the soybean side of things?
Soybeans, they didn't do one thing. They left everything unchanged. There were kind of some anticipation that we might see the exports get decreased a little bit just due to lack of China, but USDA decided just to leave the export numbers alone. We are seeing China step in and start to buy. So carry out and everything stayed the same at 290 million. So carry out, or the exports are still, we're left unchanged. So we'll have to see if January, if we do get a yield reduction, will we see the USDA drop our exports by 25 or 50 million bushels? That's a possibility just with the lack of China here early on this fall.
All right, Cory, well, moving on to the livestock side of things, cattle and hogs. I know feeders had a little bit of a rough day yesterday. How did the livestock side of things go?
Pretty mixed on the day. They had another, I say mixed, feeder cattle had another, I think, a little bit over a $6 trading range, which, for feeder cattle, that's pretty normal. So they were kind of mixed across the board, as were live cattle. So I think we had this nice rally back up. They got beat up yesterday. So now I wouldn't be surprised if we wouldn't consolidate here for a little bit. We just had too strong of a rally, too fast, too steep of a move up on both live cattle and feeder cattle. So taking a little break in here, I think, would be a very strong for the charts and stuff. Hogs the same way. I think they were the December hogs were up a little bit, 10-20 cents, with the deferreds down just a little bit on the day.
All right, Cory, if folks want to take a look at some of the intel you guys are looking at and some of the ways you guys are figuring the markets and how they're moving right now, or have some conversations about what people need to be doing, what's the best way for them to get that ball rolling, get that conversation started?
Yeah, head on over to our website, which is agmarket.net. You can get our toll-free number on there. You can also sign up for a free market consultation with one of us brokers. Just fill out the form, and we'd be happy to sit down with you and talk over the market. So,
all right, that's Cory Bratland of agmarket.net. Cory, thanks so much. We appreciate the insight as always.
All right, thanks, Dustin.
And that's been a look at our closing market analysis from the folks at agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the numbers closed on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen. At the close, March corn was up 4 1/4 at 448 even. January beans down 6 1/2 at 1087 1/4. Soybean meal down $5 at 301.30 per ton. Soy oil 16 cents lower at 51.02. Chicago wheat down 1/4 cent at 534 1/2. Kansas winter wheat up 1/2 at 527 even. Kansas spring wheat up 4 cents at 561 3/4. Minneapolis spring wheat up a nickel at 576 1/4. Oats up 1 1/4 at $3 3/4. Live cattle for December were down 50 cents at 226.82. January feeders down 15 cents at 335.50. Lean hogs for February 52 cents lower at 81.87. Pork cutouts unchanged at 93.75. And Class 3 milk up 3 cents at 15.97. And that brings us to the end of the closing markets and the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. For the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Mark Magnuson, Riley Smith, and myself, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.